Let's dive into it, man. How did your weekend go? How did the project go? I'm like steeped in anticipation to hear about how it went.
It was fun. It was a funny day. This area, like Sheeprock, just doesn't see much traffic, and we parked, and I had managed to wrangle two people in with me, and we park, and right next to us is one of the guys I wrangled's like good climbing partners, just out of nowhere. I had no idea who'd be there, and then they're going to go do. So this area, Sheeprock, is a huge massif, and
It looked really cool.
It's huge. I mean, there's like 5 formations. They're all like 400 plus feet, and they just kind of stack on top of each other. And the first time I climbed in this area of the Colorado, which is called the South Platte, was doing this link up. It's a 5'8" called Sweet Cigarillo into a 5'10" called Anasazi Red. And I was like a hot shot 5'10" gem climber. And I was like, oh, this will be easy. And I still to this day, I don't think I've ever been shut down on a climb like that before. Like old school 5'10" slabbing. And I just like fell in love with the area, and it just so happened these guys were going out to do that climb, and they left the parking lot like 20 minutes before us, and we start hiking up, and we get most of the way to where we're going, which is a formation with 0 routes on it, and they are 10 steps in front of us. And they're like, hey, are we going the right way? I was like, you are about 1,000 vertical feet above where you're supposed to be right now. You are not even in the ballpark.
Did you guys have like that typical conversation in the car? Like, hey, what route you climbing?
Yeah. It was
you
like,
know?
oh, what are you guys out here doing? And they had the same question for us and all that. And so we ended up being able to give them some directions to go somewhere and find the second of the lines they were going to do. So normally you would top out one route and then walk around, scramble another couple hundred feet and do the other line. And so I was like, hey, you can skip your first route, go up here. And they ended up going out, and I heard that they had found rain, and then I heard their voices, and I was like, wait, are you guys already back? And I turn around, and there's another party coming down again at this formation where there are no other routes going in the like this is like 8 a.m, and they're hiking down from the formation. I'm like, did you guys just climb? And they're like, nope, we got so lost, we walked all the way around this massif. We've been hiking for like an hour and a half. It's like, what on earth? And then 2 hours later, I'm actively drilling a bolt on lead, and I just hear like, Tal. I'm like, what? And I'm like, who is that? And they're like, oh, it's Tyson, which is who I took up on the route 2 weeks ago. And so I turn around and I'm looking for him, it sounds like he is just like 150 feet below me on the ground, 200 feet below me on the ground. And I can't see him. And he's like, oh, look by the base of this route. And I look, and he is like, I went home and measured on Google Maps. He is 2,000 feet away. Sounds like he is basically right below me. He sounds like he is my belayer. And I was like, what on earth? He's just like waving as a dot in the distance. And it was just weird because everybody I know, like nobody runs into people in this formation. Somehow we ran into multiple people we knew. Everybody's getting lost. Everybody's getting their ass kicked. It was like the most quintessential experience. And so, yeah, we made it to the base of what will be the last pitch. And then an electrical storm rolled in like 3 hours before it was supposed to. And so had to bail out, but super stoked to get back and finish it. I mean, that thing is just spectacular.
Is it a new high point you got to?
Yeah. So extended it another 2 pitches.
Sick.
So it's 5 pitches now. It'll be 6 total.
The off width that you took a picture of and sent me, that's the last pitch. That's
pitch,
that's the Widowmaker.
Yeah. So I got to the, like in that picture, there's like a notch inside the chimney. And so we did the last pitch I did was a short traverse pitch into the base of that chimney, and you look up in the chimney and it's just, you were like, oh dear, what have I done?
Now we were talking about sizes. I had guessed like 5 to 7. What do you think?
I mean, to start, it's like a 3-foot wide chimney.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so it's massive.
I think it might pinch down to a 6 at like the very top. But it's probably gonna be like chimneying pretty much the whole way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so at that point, big bros aren't going to work. The giant valley giants aren't going to work. And so what? You're bolting?
Yeah, it'll be bolts. I think it's important to. I want this route to be accessible. I want it to be an adventure climb, but I don't want it to be gate kept behind like $800 of specialized gear that people bought on a mountain project for sale post. And so I'll have bolts in there and anything that's not like reasonable to expect parties to have between themselves. I think if it has an extended section in like the 7 to 8 range, I'll probably add a bolt every 15-ish feet where it's like, hey, if you have gear, you can really sew this up. Otherwise, like you can relatively safely lead this on just bolts.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Especially in a chimney, I'd say those routes are relatively generously spaced.
Yeah, and
it's a relatively secure form of climbing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, the whole route is mixed. Like every pitch except for that short traverse has gear and bolts. It goes up. I mean, the crux pitch right now is probably in like the 12C range. So this is like a far cry from that. So I'll let people have fun and air it out. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that there will be alternative, easier starts to get to that chimney. And I don't want, like, I try to keep each pitch for a leader of that grade. As long as it can be accessed by different methods. So I don't want to make a 510 pitch for a 512 climber if you can climb a 510 to get to it, if that makes sense. So if there's like alternative joining points, I want there to be kind of based for the lowest common denominator.
Got it. Cool, man. Is it too soon to pick a name?
No, I've already got one. I picked a name, like, I think maybe before I started the first pitch.
What is it called?
I'm going to call it Ends of a Dream. Cool. And so, yeah, like I mentioned,
Talk to me about why.
Yeah, I fell in love with this massif the first time I went out to it, got inspired by it, stared at this line for hours while contemplating bailing that whole day. And so to come back like wholesale and put it together, it's literally like the culmination of basically every skill I've developed through climbing to add something to this place that's just inspired me for years.
Cool. Is the last chimney pitch going to have kind of like a namesake of its own? Like on Voyager, you've got like the incinerator pitch. Like...
Oh yeah, I'm going to name every pitch. I have no idea.
Cool.
So the pitches I'm waiting to name until I actually do all of them.
Do you name every pitch that you ever send? Like ever established?
No. Most multi pitches just get lumped in, and like single pitches all get names. And
but for this particular climb, you're going to name every pitch.
Yeah, probably.
Why? What's so special about this climb?
I just think it's cool. I love when you look at those topos and every name or every pitch has a name. It's just like a little bit more memorable. And the other,
for sure, no.
Yeah, the other part of it is this traverses a lot of the formation, and so there might be a lot of entries and exits, and so referring to everything instead of just pitch 2 of Ends of a Dream or pitch 4 of this variation or something, you can just say like, hey, you do this pitch into this pitch into this pitch.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Sick, dude. Well, I'm psyched to hear about when it all comes together.
Come check it out.
Yeah, I can't wait to check it out for sure. I send professional recording equipment to every single guest to ensure that you get top tier audio and video quality. And those costs add up. Right now, the show is also completely ad-free, and I would love to keep it that way. So if you've been enjoying the Climbing Majority podcast, would like to help keep this podcast ad-free, and want to help me cover shipping costs, consider joining our Patreon. For as little as $5 a month, you can help support the show, and you'll get access to exclusive episodes. You can find the link in our show notes, or head to patreon.com/the Climbing Majority podcast. That's patreon.com/the Climbing Majority podcast. On this topic of kind of first ascents and bolting, I really think it's really topical to talk about the Explorer and the Park Acts and kind of how that's been kind of playing out. We've had a lot of these different communities being affected by it, and obviously it's very much related to wilderness areas. So in these areas, maybe talk about this specific area. Is that affected by Explorer and Park Act? Is it in wilderness areas? Like, are there any areas that you've been establishing that have been affected by this legislation?
Yeah, so my understanding of this legislation is that it effectively allows for bolts as fixed pieces of, or like a human installation in wilderness areas, and it enables, or rather mandates, that land managers need to come up with a bolting policy or a policy for climbing management amongst themselves. This area is in USFS land, so Forest Service land. Historically, there's no restrictions on bolting there. However, it is a stone's throw away from one of the biggest wilderness areas in Colorado, which is Lost Creek Wilderness. It is the trailhead for where we're going is a mile from the trailhead to enter Lost Creek Wilderness. And Lost Creek Wilderness is kind of the epicenter of wilderness climbing in the South Platte region of Colorado, which is where I do most of my climbing. So my area is not affected by it, but it's something that we're talking about pretty frequently, right? There's been kind of murmurs of land managers and how they feel about wilderness bolting. Rocky Mountain National Park's a great example. I think a year or two ago, there was some heat put on climbers by the park due to stashing pads, building landings, things like that. And they just basically said, if you guys keep stashing pads, we'll stop allowing climbing here in the park.
So real quick on that note, this is something that I really am interested in. In your community's eye, what does stopping climbing look like?
I I don't know. I don't think it's ever successfully been done.
No one's ever had an answer.
No,
for
it's
me.
never successfully been done, I don't think. So, I mean, it might come down to, hey, we can find and ticket you. Rocky Mountain's pretty good about actually monitoring things. I don't know many folks who have gotten away with kind of, Yosemite, there's the rumors of sleeping under boulders and things like that. Everybody has those stories. That does not exist in that capacity in the park. Part of that being because it's so much more accessible to get in and out of the park historically than the valley, things like that. It's very close to metro areas.
Yeah, it's also like a tiny area where it's very easy to regulate.
Yeah. I mean, the trailheads are can be far apart, but you don't have a whole you don't have a town in the middle of the park, right? Like you have trailheads to
now,
monitor.
The one caveat I want to say, I think we're all rebels by nature as climbers. And this is a platform, and I don't want to sound like I'm advocating for us to be like, fuck it doesn't matter, they can't enforce it. That's not the point of that question. I think that it's extremely important for us to all be talking about this, because we don't want to be butting heads with the local law enforcement, with the government, with the park rangers. Like, we want to be having a copacetic relationship and find a way that works for everybody. But I am also a kind of a rebel, and I also live my life pushing the edges of everything in my life. Like, I always find the edge. Where's the edge? And then I've paid dearly for that mentality before. Like, it's cost me injuries, it's cost me other things. And so that's just part of why I ask. It's just like, what does that even look like? Like, what are we at stake of losing? Like, what does losing climbing look like? So it's just an interesting topic to dance around.
Yeah, so I'll take a step back to answer that question. So this summer, I got the opportunity to serve as a mentor in the first of its kind of a development of a new crag here in the Front Range, where we partnered directly with Jefferson County. It's the county I live in. It's just west of Denver. Jefferson County's open space program, so their public land program, as well as Arc'teryx, a few, like the AAC, the local chapter of the AAC, the BCC, which is one of our LCOs, the local climbing organization, trying to minimize the amount of acronyms I throw out here, and a bunch of affinity groups within the area to develop a new crag within the open space. The process of developing a crag with a land manager, while it does have its frustrations because you're working through the bureaucracy involved in government, is such a significantly positive experience where you're able to generate something that is truly for the community at the ground level. There's a lot of talks of putting in permit processes like you see in Bears Ears for new fixed hardware and things like that, and the frustrations that come with it. When that system works, it is awesome. It is so cool to work through the community like that. And you see it in Eldo. They have a fixed hardware review board. You see it in the Flatirons, where not only, one of the things about developing is you want people to climb your routes. You want them to be held to a high standard. You want people to be excited about it. And their review processes are very public, where they basically ingest applications either monthly or quarterly, and then those are all pushed publicly, and they go turn to the public and say, would you want this? And you start drumming up interest, and you drum up hands who want to be involved in all of this. And it's such a cool experience to say, like, I'm doing this for the community, and the community is actively pushing in to be involved as well. And so I think that's one kind of unknown to most people that you would be losing in these stakes is like, I mean, once you sour that relationship with a land manager, it takes an enormous amount of time, changing of hands, and proactive work to make it productive. And those productive conversations are what lead to these partnerships where you can get more done, where you can do things that weren't even considered. Recently, the BCC just cleared there's like a popular dyno, I think, at Flagstaff Mountain outside of Boulder that had like an ankle breaking landing. And they just worked with the local land manager to say like, hey, can we completely restructure this landing so it's flat and safe for everybody? And that's something that, if that was just like a land manager who's relatively hands off, still probably never would have happened, because that's an enormous amount of work for what is like largely a throwaway V3 dyno or something like that, right? And so to be able to say like, yeah, we have hands, we got enough people, like we can collaborate and organize people who are actually passionate about this, like that kind of organized work is really difficult to do without a positive relationship with the land manager. And that's ignoring the, hey, now you might get fined for climbing, or bivvy permits are going to be hard to come by and they're going to be patrolling there, and so now you might get fined for bivvying, or they're going to have rangers turning people around and now you might get to experience these things. Or I mean, I can't imagine they ever have the staffing for it, but they go out and chop bolts or remove anchors or things like that. Like that type of stuff
It just turns into a war.
Exactly. And that's
it's a net loss for everyone.
100%. And that's true whether that's a war with land managers or a war within your climbing community with bolting wars. Like, that's something that the South Platte region has had, equal to or greater than in level that you saw in Yosemite or Joshua Tree or things like that. Like, that's a storied history of chopping bolts here as recently as now. Like, that's still a common thing that happens out here. And so it's just a loss for everyone. And so, like, creating the infighting with land managers doesn't stop at land managers. It just creates a negative environment. And part of the rebellious thing about climbing that brings people, or that is so enjoyable, is it does bring together like those birds of the feather, right? It brings together those rebellious folks, the folks who want to be outside, who want to do these things, be off the fringe of culture. And if everybody's fighting there, like, it's just another battleground. It's not a safe space for anybody to enjoy and be able to kind of relinquish some of that pain they feel elsewhere.
It's interesting to hear that you have a system that works and you have a kind of like process with a local land manager that is positive. I think in general, at least in my social circles, the experience has been negative and people are afraid and people are fearful. Like, I went to an SNCC meeting recently here in Southern Nevada Climbers Coalition, and like everybody, there was like a group of 30 people and everybody was like super scared, super fearful. Like, everyone's kind of got their guard up, like trying to figure out what this whole BLM implementation of climbing rules are. And like, everyone's ready to set these regulations and like get on it. But like, people are missing the point. So talk to me about why it's working in your area and why you think it might not be working in others.
Yeah. So I think it's important to say that it works sometimes. There are some places where it works. And so one thing that it requires is, part of the reason a partnership works is both people are acting in good faith. And if the regulations are put together simply as a blockade, it's not going to work, right? There needs to be somebody who's dedicated to it. And so the Flatirons group works, the Eldo group works because there are very passionate people in those positions who work to review things on time, actually go out there, scout things. A great example is this weekend, at the time we're recording this, a significantly popular portion of Eldo, including rewritten, the second most trafficked climb probably in America behind the Bastille Crack, also in Eldo, is being shut down so they can go out and just trundle a bunch of death blocks because they replaced a tat tree anchor with a bolted anchor and wanted to remove the death blocks in the way and help facilitate new climbing. Like, that's insane for a state park and for them to be willing to just go out and do that, like peak season on one of the most popular routes in America, but they're willing to do it because they care. This process with Jefferson County Open Space went really positively, but what was behind the scenes was probably close to 2 years of work, of recon, of applying for permits, of getting that process rolling. There's a huge lead time up to it. And so that is probably where there's still some room for growth. A good example is I recently applied for a permit. The top third of a route at a popular area in Denver called North Table Mountain fell off. And the bolts for protecting that part of the climb were in the rock that fell off. And so we went, checked it out, cleaned it up. The new sequence that goes is great. And we were going to just replace those bolts, put in a permit to do so. And it took 4 months to approve that. And now, I mean, that area is super sunny and hot. Now it's out of season. Now it's probably going to be another 6 months before we actually go out there and bolt it because it's so hot. So there are instances where it doesn't work. And there's instances.
Well, I mean, I'd say in that situation, it still works. Like, you still got
an approval.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah.
Like right now in Joshua Tree, the issue is that, and I think that maybe it's the difference because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but these areas you're talking about seem to be kind of like smaller areas. Like, geographically, are they smaller?
I mean, smaller than Joshua Tree for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think out in the West, a lot of this wilderness space or these, I feel like out here we're mostly dealing with wilderness space and not a lot of kind of like smaller parceled out private properties. And so, they put out a permit system for J-Tree, but then there's no federal funding anymore. And so the person whose job it is to apply, like go over the permits, is now gone. And so now the system that in place is broken. And so it's like, it seems like this concept of permits and everything works if it's a smaller community and everybody's on board.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you need the resources, right? Like, realistically, you need people so you need people to actually go out there and review things. Like, if part of the process is reviewing vegetation, reviewing rockfall hazard, reviewing if this isn't just a pile of choss. You need somebody who will actually do that, A. And B, you need the right people, because there is also like a too many cooks in the kitchen situation that we see at some of the other areas here in the Front Range, where one person applies for a permit and there's 9 people who want to go check it out, and you need something unanimous from all of them. And it's like, that's not how climbing's ever works. Like, why? That's not how land management's ever worked. Why are we doing that? And so there's a balance. And I think we as a climbing community nationally, globally, are still trying to figure out exactly what that secret sauce is that makes this work. When it works well, it is so special. And when it doesn't work well, it is really, really frustrating and very discouraging to be around. And so I think we'll see more of it. I think that's going to be the default moving forward. I think like the permit-based application system is just going to be something we see more and more of. And hopefully more of them rely on climbers to self-moderate like we have historically. You know, we talked about bolting wars earlier. That is something that land managers have largely allowed climbers to self-regulate in the past, and things like that. And hopefully they'll continue to do so with some of these permit applications. It's just a little bit more out in the open. It helps prevent bolt wars, right? You don't have the issue of like, that guy stole my line. Like, that is now no longer a situation.
Anything that's not gone through the system is essentially invalidated.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, so I would imagine most landowners aren't climbers. And so talk to me about how we can approach these landowners as climbers and get them on board. And like, because I would imagine some people are just like, fuck that. Like, why? Why would I want you here? I don't want the traffic. I don't want the bolts. I don't want any of it. Get off my property. And so like in your experience with these areas that are working, why are the landowners on board, and kind of how can we kind of like copy and paste that into other areas and how we're interacting with them?
Yeah. So I think climbing is gaining a lot of popularity, right? It's in the Olympics now. It's seen as like a valid use case more frequently. We talk about legislation with the Explorer Act. Some other legislation pieces are going through at different states to allow for landowners to allow recreational use of their land without accepting liability for those things. So that's now, like, that's historically been a huge deterrent, is we don't want people climbing on our property. We don't want to get sued if they get hurt, things like that. And so that's huge as well. So I think awareness of that is big, especially if you're in a state that recently passed that legislature, is making sure you can say, hey, you know, I know this might be a concern that no longer needs to be. Being good stewards is kind of the biggest thing, right? Like the OHV community, the off-road community here in the Front Range, has a lot of partners and land managers because they do a lot of trail days. They do a lot of cleanup days. They're very involved. They pay dues towards these things. Like it's not seen as elective in a way that joining your LCO often is in the climbing space, right? It's easy to be like, well, I'm in a climbing gym, so why do I don't want to also pay for an LCO or also contribute to the ASCA or things like that. Versus when you're doing OHV, like, you're actually, like, you doing OHV is the thing. And so you're typically paying dues, doing something towards contributing towards that. And so I think that's a big way we do it, is we go and say like, hey, we want to do this. There's no liability. You know, we have people who have built trails for 20 years. They think they've mapped out something that could work. What do you think about this? I'd like to walk it with you. How can we maintain access? Like, can we create an easement? Can we work, like, go ahead and fit new areas into the management plan of our local climbing organizations? Things like that. Just be proactive. Don't just do it and ask for permission or ask for forgiveness later. I think we're kind of past that point in climbing where there's like understanding of where new areas are is way too readily available to do the whole ask for forgiveness.
I didn't know.
Yeah, you can't. Like, we have way too many tools now, and it's seen like you're acting in bad faith because you probably are. Like, you probably know you're trespassing. You probably know you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Like, that ignorant side of it isn't really there in the same way that it once was. And so just going in and being like, hey, I just want to do this, and being willing to say no because there's so much rock. At least, I mean, I'm spoiled. I'm in Colorado. There's so much rock that like a no is like, shucks. All right, I'll walk 10 more minutes down the road and find something else. Like,
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. You talked about too, like how, you know, it takes a lot of us as climbers to be unified. And I think the biggest plague we have as a community is when we start bickering and fighting amongst ourselves. I think that that's when like people who are kind of considering climbing and considering these rules, like, oh, do I want people to be climbing on my land? Like, if we can't even be on the same page as climbers, and we're visibly to the public, bickering amongst ourselves and battling, and there's these rumors of bolt wars, it's not going to do anything for us. So, and I think those issues that we have amongst ourselves are built around ethics and bolting ethics. And like some people like, I only want glue-ins, or, I don't think we should be replacing the bolts on this rock because it's a test piece. And like, yeah, it's old and it's dangerous, but that's what it's there for. So like, how do you and your community handle these internal conflicts and create a unified front for these kind of landowners and the external public to see that kind of unified front?
Yeah, unified front. That is a hard thing to, like you mentioned, to achieve in climbing. I think any cursory visit to the Mountain Project forum will prove that for you.
Reddit, Mountain Project, it's all toxic as fuck. Yeah, it's terrible.
Anywhere you can find it. So I think what has worked in the past is you find somebody. So there's not typically going to be many people electing themselves to be leaders of a big project like that, especially when there's...
It's all volunteer work
exactly.
too, isn't it?
It's a lot of work. Yeah. It's a lot of lead time. It's a lot of mental work as well, following up with people, all of that. And so historically how this has looked is one or two people take like lead of that. And it's kind of like hey, I'm the leader, so I get to dictate a little bit of what this is going to look like. And either you're in or you're out. Like, you're going to play by these rules or you're not. Here in Colorado, we have so many options for rock and things like that. It kind of goes back to hey, this doesn't look like the way I want it to look, so I'm going to go find a place of my own to play, which is great. I think having, it's funny, we talk a lot about in that mentorship program what bolting should look like and things like that. And one of the things we really preach is like, climbing looks better when there's a diversity in thought, when people don't want the exact same thing out of the sport that I do, right? Like, somebody's going to look at a piece of rock differently and equip it differently. Somebody, like, having run out routes is great. Having super tightly bolted routes is great. Having moderates, having hard climbs, like all of these, like, there is somebody who will want that same thing that you do. And so having that diversity is really important. And so it's one of those things where when you're doing these projects, you want to make sure there's a level of that diversity in there, but you also don't want to create a crag where somebody walks up and there's 70% hyper tightly bolted routes, and then they get on something else and all of a sudden they're doing 30-foot runouts. Like, what the hell, right? Like, at the formation level, I personally believe that there should be a level of identity there so that I can use my guidebook to get there and then dump it and just climb what looks interesting. And so there is some level of like, hey, we should minimize variability at like the very local level, but promoting diversity on like the more regional scale is I think important.
What about like in your climbing community areas? It seems like at least here in the SNCC, the people involved aren't able to actually go out and do any of the route replacement. I don't like, especially out here because Red Rock is wilderness. Like, I don't think they're legally allowed to at this point because with the Parks Act and stuff, it's like all the installation that exists currently can stay, but nothing new can be put in at this point. That's currently how it stands, right? With wilderness areas?
No, so it's up to the local. So there is like if the local Red Rock area says, hey, we don't allow new installations, that would override it. But functionally right now in wilderness, as long as you hand drill, there is no difference. Like at the baseline level, you can still install new bolts. But if you have local regulations that are overruling that, then your local regulations supersede.
Okay. And I think I also saw something, it might have been in the Colorado region, it might have been up in Utah, but I'll just use what do they call local climbing coalitions? Is that like the great word for it?
LCO, or? Local Climbing Organization.
LCOs? Yeah. Okay. So the LCO up in Salt Lake, they basically turned voting towards the community. We're like, what do you think about glue-ins? What do you think about old bolts on old routes? It turned into this kind of like, take a vote, let the public vote, and then that's how we make a decision. Does that kind of seem like how the LCOs in your area operate? Is it like a peer review group thing, or is it like I'm in charge, this is kind of how I feel like we should do it, and this is what we're going to do?
It's a mix of both. I think there's definitely a soliciting feedback that happened, but there is certainly that feedback is dumb. We're not going to ignore that. That happens as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how are you involved in your LCOs?
So I'm a part of, so I used to be really active with rebolting with the BCC, which is a Boulder Climbing Community, who, despite the name, also mostly covers the Denver climbing area as well. Did a lot of rebolting with them, was a rebolting like mentee and instructor there as well. Probably replaced like 600 or 700 bolts when I was with them. But now I've shifted focus a little bit more towards the PPCA, which is the Colorado Springs based group. It's the Pikes Peak Climbers Alliance. And on the South Platte committee there. So they cover the area I climb in most. And so I figured, and they kind of had it like a resurgence in the last couple of years. And I wanted to be a part of helping shape the vision for the group going forward. So I'm on the committee there. I'm in the inbox of both LCOs way more than they would like. So I still chat with people all the time. I'm still trying to be involved however I can. And I'm pretty much just like, if anybody asks like, hey, can you do this? I try and make time for it.
Yeah. So are you like a decision maker, or are you kind of like the working man, the one who kind of like makes things happen and reports information back to the LCOs?
Yeah, definitely more of the working man. I do try and like propose new ideas. So like propose cleanups, we have like a cost share agreement with our local Forest Service district. And so we have to enact a few different events like cleanups or things like that we're contributing to the overall area to fulfill that. And so I'll propose some different ideas there, or fundraisers or whatever we can do. But mostly I just try and be busy. I'm not the most bureaucratic person to be involved in some of these things.
Yeah, no, totally understand. I'm the same way. Bolting ethics. Talk to me about what's good and what's bad.
Yeah. So I know we have a limited time frame here, so I won't go in my 24-hour soapbox of like,
hey man, I got no time frame.
All right. Well, first things first. Ground up is not an ethic. I just want to throw that out there. I'm going to go ahead and hot take on the pod.
And snippet social media viral posts.
Exactly. Ground up is not an ethic. Ground up is a tactic. If you are bolting a route, ground up, especially in like modern day. If you had 2 episodes, I forgot who the name is with, someone who's gotten more PLA to oars than like any human in history.
Paul Ramsden.
Mm-hmm. Legend, one of my favorite episodes of any climbing media ever. He talks about like bringing the bolt kit ensures your way up. It's like, it's no adventure. And as a prolific bolter, I 100% agree. It's largely why I bring it with me. And
he says he doesn't bring a bolt kit because it does ensure.
Yeah, that's what I said. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. He
meant.
Yeah, he was like, basically, I don't bring bolts because then it does ensure your success.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's why I bring bolts on every route I do.
You agree with his mentality in the opposite reason.
It's like they're really good at their job. And so I think ground up is 100% a tactic, not an ethic. I do think it's like very valuable to go ground up on some things. It's just like a matter of, this is the most efficient way to do it.
So maybe a better way to say it is ground up is not an ethic, it's a style.
Yeah, I say it's a tactic. It's just another method of getting something done.
Okay. Tactic, I think, sound, at least to someone who thinks it's an ethic, a tactic is almost like a jab with a knife in the side. Style has got a little bit more like polish.
It's easier to,
it's a style. It's a style.
Yeah. No, I mean, when we talk about climbing ethics, I think climbing ethics. So I think when you do development, what's important is understanding why you are doing it. You have to have a why. And whether that why is, I just want to climb these routes, I just want to equip routes I want to do, or it's, hey, I don't see a lot of people who look or sound like me in the guidebook and I want better representation out there, or it's, I want to leave a lasting legacy, give something back to the community, whatever. All of that shapes kind of what you want out of climbing, out of development, and helps you make decisions that way. And so I think ethics really boil down to, are you doing things in good faith? And are you jeopardizing future access or unfairly putting other climbers at risk? And so a good example, like run out routes, I don't think are bad ethics unless you're going top down and rehearsing them. Like unless you're head pointing something that future climbers would not be under the expectation to head point. Or you're chipping holds, you're doing things that will jeopardize future access. So whether you go top down, ground up, bolt it, mix, climb, like trad, whatever, like I don't care that much. But as long as you are doing it in good faith to what you are trying to get out of development, I think that's, and you're not, jeopardizing access or putting other climbers at risk in an unfair way, then go for it.
Now, how do you feel about route development for yourself versus for other people? Do you feel like it is one or the other, or do you feel like it's in the end, it's always going to be for somebody else?
So I try to do both. I do a lot of routes like for myself. I've done probably 30 or 40% of the routes I do are ground up, and I've pretty much added bolts to every single one of them afterwards, right? I get the experience I want out of my first ascent, and then on the wrap down, I'm adding bolts, I'm giving it a good clean, I'm doing whatever because I want somebody to climb it after me. And I don't necessarily want them to have my same experience, because while there's a lot of kudos given to folks doing things ground up with like modern technology and bolting drills, the secret sauce is that it is really comfortable knowing that you can throw in a bolt whenever you want. Like that you can just stop and, you know what, I'm a little scared, I'm gonna throw in a bolt right now. And so like a 30-foot run out that's elective versus a 30-foot run out that you're forced to do because that's where the bolt is two very different experiences.
Well, it almost seems like now, like back in the day, all these older routes that had run outs, it's like because they didn't have a stance to hand drill a route or a bolt. And so it was like these bold routes were almost forced, like you said. But now with the technology that we have, you are almost electing to make it more dangerous because of whatever kind of ego you have for the route. And so there's a difference there. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm typically, if I'm running something out, like when I'm going ground up, it's because I'm way too scared to stop and drill. And so I just push it to the next good stance where I can stop and drill. Because I do all my stance bolting historically. This new traverse that I'm working on is the first time I've drilled off of a piece or anything like that.
Like a hook or
something, or like a horrifically barely body weight cam or whatever, something like that. And so, you know, I don't really buy into a lot of the storied legend of going ground up, and I found that most folks who enforce what we consider bolting ethics, things like did you go ground up, or, you know, is it run out enough, or things like that, are people who have never
is it run out enough?
Is
that a question?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what so I mentioned like the bolt chopping wars here in the Platte. Like for sure people would chop your bolts if you had bolts a little bit closer than they'd like, or if they just didn't like you.
Who the fuck has the time to go out there and do that?
You'd be surprised. So
that's crazy.
My long-term mentor, Nathan Brown, anybody who's climbed in North Carolina has heard of him. He's an absolute legend. He learned to climb, I think it's Stone Mountain in Georgia, where routes they either have 1, 2, or 3 bolts for 120-foot pitch, and one of the routes had 4 bolts, and so they put a dog tag on the 4th bolt, and it was like, if you clip this, you're a like just on the dog tag. And so people would clip it and then read it and be like, oh damn it, like take their draw out. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Those are some staunch ethics. It's interesting how it differs from area to area. Let's be real for a second. The current blueprint for a successful climbing podcast is simple. Interview the best climbers in the world. Big names mean big followings, lots of SEO power, and a built-in audience that helps boost every episode. But this show has never been about that. From the beginning, I have made it my mission to bring you stories from the climbing majority. The climbers who don't live in the limelight. The ones who avoid interviews, quietly put up routes, and give back in ways that are rarely recognized. And while that's what makes this show special, it also means we have an uphill battle when it comes to growth. And that is where you come in. If you're psyched about the show, if you've been inspired, entertained, or fired up about an episode, word of mouth is the single most important way you can help the show. Share an episode with a friend. Play one on a group road trip. Post about the show on social media. Jump onto Reddit threads and Mountain Project forums and share with people what you've been listening to. Be sure to tag the show, tag your favorite guests, and spread the word. And if you want to help even more, I'm currently sending posters to climbing gyms around the country. If you'd like to sport one in your climbing gym, be sure to reach out. Email me at theclimbingmajoritypodcast@gmail.com, and I will be sure to send you one. Let's band together and show the climbing community that the climbing majority has a voice. We had talked about stewardship a little bit. I feel like in general, it seems like there's a lack of community involvement with stewardship. I'd say there's so many people coming to the world of climbing. People are coming out of gyms. I'm a victim of this until I've gotten more involved with this community with the podcast. It's so easy to just go out, get the guidebook, climb a route, leave, and not really think twice about what went into it or what is going into it to maintain it. So talk to me about your kind of experience there with stewardship, and maybe we can talk about some advice on how we can all participate on our day-to-day.
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think stewardship, I found most often, you mentioned how easy it is. I think it's found, like, buy-in is found where buy-in is required. And so if you're in an area with a lot of climbing infrastructure that is catered to you, it is very easy to fall into like that consumer mindset, right? If I go to Planet Granite gyms, I'm a customer. They're actively trying to improve my experience, and that becomes an expectation of mine. And so I don't think that this, we talk about stewardship and lack of involvement. I don't think that's happening intentionally. I don't think people are acting in bad faith. I think it's just easy to be conditioned to that when that's the environment that you're most often surrounded with, right? It's very easy for me to go to the gym after work rather than go to the crag. So I've found that stewardship is really good in those places where climbing access is really difficult. I'll shout out like the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, the UPCC. They are awesome. Carolina Climbers Coalition, another awesome group, although there's some incredible climbing in the Carolinas. After Hurricane Helene, most of their work in fundraising was done towards improving trails, rebuilding houses, like things like that. They were doing stuff not specific towards climbing, but just what does the community need? And so I think stewardship is really important. I think trying to break free of that mindset of, hey, this is just all made for me. This is all to my benefit. And trying to figure out like, oh, somebody who is just like me did this, I can do this too, is kind of like what's that aha to get you there, to get you involved. And there's so many different ways to get involved and so many different levels to get involved, whether that's financially, sweat equity, just telling people. A great way to be a good steward for the sport and help people coming back to the sport and having a good time is just be nice at the crag. Smile. Don't, as soon as somebody walks up, be like, what are you getting on? Like, don't do that. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do to improve this sport for everyone that doesn't look like putting in bolts or breaking rock for trail or donating hundreds of dollars a month.
Mm-hmm. What about participation with the LCOs? Do you feel like that's kind of something we should all be kind of seeking out and seeing how we can participate if we have an LCO in our local area?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like I said, there's a lot of ways to get involved. So some of that's just like, hey, if you just want to throw 20 bones at them every month, like that's awesome. They'll love that. But if you want to come out to a trail day and shake hands and meet the people who are making decisions and give your input, like that's how you see yourself reflected in the community. If they're doing what already reflects you, great. Like throw them some money. And if you feel like their mission doesn't necessarily align with yours, like great, give them some feedback and see if that can change. See if you can see more of yourself in that community. There's a lot of folks who complain that they don't contribute to the LCOs because they're not doing what they had hoped they would do. And it's like, are you telling them like what you want them to do? Or you, you are like, a lot of times everything's typically volunteer based. Like if you want more focus on an area, go volunteer. Say like, hey, I want to do this. Is there anybody else who wants to do this? Can we make a committee here? Can we just have a little focus group here? Can you help me get the word out about this event that I want to put on just to do a cleanup at this crag? Things like that. Like, yeah, absolutely they would. And so I think a lot of folks don't recognize that this isn't the climbing gym. You don't have to apply to be involved. You like, I don't have to, be given the DeWalt to put up a route. I don't have to do these. Like I can just go do that. I don't need somebody to tell me that I can do that. Which is such a beautiful thing about the sport is you can kind of get involved at whatever level you want and whatever you put in is taken out as well.
Yeah. I think you brought up a couple good points. I think that, if you don't have the time to go build trail or you don't have the knowledge or time to go replace bolts, establish routes, I think financial compensation is something we should all kind of relatively consider. I mean, we pay $10 a month for Spotify. We pay, I'm sure we're going to end up paying $15 a month for Mountain Project at some point. We have these subscriptions we pay for every day, and we go out, if in our local climbing area, I'll just use Red Rock as an example. We are in Red Rock every season, twice a year. We're out there all the time. There's people out there maintaining trails, replacing bolts, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So if you don't have the time to actually be there and physically participate, I'd say any dollar counts. And I think there's a difference between, like, I think right now the access fund is kind of a blanket, and I don't necessarily mean to like, for people who may be, considering donating to the access fund, I don't want to be like, fuck the access fund, donate to your LCO. It's like there's room for both, but don't forget about your LCO too. Like if you are very involved in your local area, then Maybe an LCO is kind of more kind of would benefit, make you feel like you're contributing more to your local area. And then also I think another way we can contribute, at least out here I've seen, is like take a picture of bad bolts and send them to the people involved in the LCOs, like with here in Red Rock at the SNCC. Like take a picture of a bad bolt, send it to the president of the SNCC and be like, hey man, I noticed this, like just heads up, maybe this should be replaced, and just providing information.
Yeah, that's huge. That's something we explicitly ask folks to do through our LCOs is if you see a bad bolt, like try and remember what type it is. If it's a hex head, let us know that. If there was a nut on the bolt, let us know that. It helps us identify what kind of tools we need to bring, what we might be running into. But yeah,
I've heard that pictures are like the biggest.
Pictures are great because there's a lot of differentiations in what's really bad to some people and what's totally bomber to some people. And so, let folks know. I mean, there's so many ways to get involved, right? Like financially, but also donate used shoes to like your local city hall that has a climbing wall and a youth program. There's the Access Fund, there's your LCO, there's the ASCA, there's, Kai Leitner has Climbing for Change, helping get people in underrepresented groups access to the outdoors. There's, gyms like Memphis Rocks. Like there's so many things that aren't just in your local bubble. That's the climbing scene as a whole that you can contribute to. There's Jay Noer and Lee Hanchey both talked a lot about what makes a local in an area. And it's not somebody who you don't have to live X amount of minutes from your crag or something like that. It's who's the person who shows up on trail days? Who's the person who's helping rebolt? Who's the face whose name you actually know because they introduced themselves to the crag? Like that's what makes a local. It's not just, yep, they climbed the 13D project at this crag and so they get local status. It's who's actually contributing to the local scene. And so like I know plenty of people who are locals to areas they don't live in because they spend 2 months a year there, and when they're there, they are there. They're fully ensconced. They know everybody. They're doing the trail days. They're doing all that. And there was the Real Rock a while back about Joe's Valley. And that was literally what happened, right? Some guy from Salt Lake who was such a local, he ended up eventually moving there, but it's like, no, it's just, hey, how can I help with city cleanup day? How can I help with crag cleanups? How can I do this? And that's so accessible to so many people where it's like, yeah, just put a wrench in your bag, whatever, be a local.
And that was the same story where like they got so involved with the community out there and educated the town of like who we are. We're not just a bunch of like, poor dirt bags. Like we have money. These are like $100,000 vans. Like, and the whole town marketing changed. Like climbers welcome, like climbers coffee. Like they started selling kombucha in the store and it like sold out. Like they were making a bunch of money. And so, yeah, it's just, I think another really great example of like, yeah, we just need to be our best selves and start to integrate and show people, who we are and what we have to offer. And I think people will be receptive.
Yeah, 100%. We're people just like any other community. And so when you come into it with open arms and say, hey, no, I'm not just here to use these resources. Like I genuinely want to be a part of this community. That's received in such a different way.
Yeah, 100%. So you are part of a thriving, connected climbing community now. But it seems like it wasn't always like that. It seems like there was a point where you were kind of like begging for mentors, struggling to find climbing partners. Considering where you are now, that fact kind of like stood out to me. So tell me about that part of your life.
Yeah. So started climbing in Clemson, South Carolina when I was going to school there. Took a rock climbing course to keep my scholarship because I needed an extra credit hour. And thought it was cool until we went outside for the first time, which was the last day of class, and just fell in. It was basically like a
seems like the opposite of most people's stories.
It was basically like a lifetime supply of like climbing gym top rope birthday parties until we went and top roped outside, and I just fell in love. I was like, oh, now I get it. Like I get to spend time outside. I get to do less cardio than hiking. I'm like playing and having fun. And, I grew up climbing trees in Florida. That's where we were originally born. And my grandma had a beautiful tree in front of her yard. And so me and my brother would climb that all the time. And, I started climbing in Clemson, was really into like backpacking and stuff. And when I graduated, did the PCT, quickly realized I hated hiking. Like before I even hit the start of the trail, like from the walk from the bus stop you get dropped off to the terminus, I was like, I have made a critical mistake. Did like 1,800 miles on that, and then got off and went to Denver, and was like, well, I was really planning on being into hiking when I got out here, and that's not going to work. So I need to find something else, and kind of remembered climbing and just self-taught, like went to that North Table area I talked about right outside of Denver, as easy walk-up top rope access, and did a refresher on everything I learned in course, and then YouTube University'd my way and a pull-up bar in my door to learn anchor systems and rappelling and all of that, and went outside and bluffed my way into getting a few climbing partners here and there, and then begged all of my coworkers to let me take them out once I felt like I could do so without killing them, and just did not have consistent partners in any way. Probably until I had one good climbing partner who had actually been dropped. He's like one of my best friends, Jack. He'd been dropped like 50 feet from a route before I met him. And he was still climbing, and then
in what circumstances do you know?
He was going for a move, fell, and his partner was using an ATC and just dropped him.
Just like sizzled through the fucking device.
Yeah, just straight through. He landed in like 8 inches of water in the river. This is in Upper Dream Canyon in Boulder. Fell in like 8 inches of water, and on some like video game physics was completely fine. like just
shit.
A couple bruises and stuff, but was otherwise fine. And he and I were like really good partners for a while, but that moment kind of like resurfaced after a year or two, and he just ended up getting out of climbing, and so went back to like kind of
like a close call happened again, and then he bailed.
No, it's just like it's kind of just resurfaced, and he just couldn't get it out of his head. Like it was one of the, like, even though I was using a gree and things like that, it started like infecting. Like he wasn't enjoying bouldering anymore. It just like was in general just the anxiety around the sport.
That sucks.
Yeah, and so went back to scrounging for partners, and it wasn't really until I started developing where like I started getting mentors, and then started finding partners, and started kind of, because developing and his largely manual labor and top rope soloing, you don't actually need a second person for it. And so I started being able to operate on my own schedule a little bit, which meant I could be a little bit more selective with putting mental energy towards partnerships that I thought were actually going to last, instead of teaching somebody how to lead belay and hoping that they would they would take to it.
Here's a gree.
Yeah.
Tie a knot at the end of the system. Good luck.
When you open this handle, please be willing to close it again. Like, one of the, always, I was never worried about getting to the top. It was always getting back down that scared me. And so
you're like, I think I'm going to rappel.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, there's actually a great walk off here. I'll see you in 45 minutes. And so that was really difficult, but I argued with enough people on Mountain Project that then offered to show me that I was wrong in person, specifically Peter Thomas. He was the former head of rebolting for the Boulder Climbing Coalition. He is the man. He is like the reason I was rebolting. He's the reason I was developing. If he's listening to this, which I hope he is, like, we mostly give each other shit, so he probably doesn't know this is how I feel about him, but he's been like such an inspiration in climbing, and just like what a steward can be for the area, and how you can both be successful as a climber and like community member, as well as give back in these meaningful ways. And so he kind of took me under his wing. He had posted a practice ground anchor at the base of a crag, and I commented some snarky comment about there's another one like 3/4 of a mile upstream, and I was like, why do we have two so close? And he offered to just be like, hey, let's talk about it. Like, I need to do some rebolting. Why don't you come out? You can look at it in person, and we can replace some bolts. And I've like changed my tune dramatically, but just like that welcoming, like humble mindset has just been like such a positive influence. And once I started bringing that into other interactions with people in the climbing community, and stopped doing the whole like, I am saltier than you shtick, it just became so much easier to find mentors and partners, and kind of then become the mentor to other people and be that person for other people. And so
you had said a couple things. One, you seemed like there was almost like a belief where there's like a challenge between like being a successful climber, also being a route developer, and being a steward. And then it almost like you feel like you came to a place where they all cohesively worked together. What was that transition like? Why did you feel like there was a tension between those three things separately?
Yeah, I think the one thing that keeps people from being like lifers in climbing is feeling like they need to follow a specific path. And that's where I was. I felt like I needed to climb specific grades. At the time, I was super scared of like lead falls. I felt like I needed to be this hardcore, like badass climber. I needed to climb super hard and things like that. And I stopped doing that and started just following where my passion in the sport was lying. Sometimes that was sport climbing and like projecting and trying hard, and sometimes that was adventuring and doing easy long stuff and bouldering and things like that. And all of a sudden I saw that I could spend a season developing, not training at all, and come back stronger just because I was excited to do things. And specifically that catalyst was COVID, the lockdowns, where I was horrified of like climbing and just frustrated with a lot of things. And the ginormous 2-week lockdown we had here in Denver, I came out the other end frothing at the mouth, and I was like, I don't care what it is. I just want to climb. I just want to have fun. Like, I just want to be outside. And like almost on a dime, I just, like, my lead head kind of came under control, where it wasn't that I was less scared. It's just that I was willing to acknowledge the fear and either sit with it or decide, not today, I can come back. Like, I can always come back. I wasn't in that like over stoker, like, I have to do this today, this has to happen thing. And it just like immediately kind of metered itself into a more sustainable path. And I started seeing like, I got a lot of fulfillment doing stewardship work, not just cragging. I got a lot of fulfillment replacing bolts, not just projecting. And that there was these ways I could be interacting with the sport without actively being on the wall, climbing hard, that fulfilled those needs for me.
Do you feel like you put that pressure that you put on yourself on everybody around you as well?
I don't think so. I think it's more of a what is the word for it? Imposter syndrome. That's the word. Felt like a lot of imposter syndrome that I was dealing with, and I don't think I've ever put that on other folks. And if I have, I apologize to anybody listening to this. But I definitely think that was an issue for myself, where I felt like I needed to do certain things to engage with the sport and love it, and that the way anybody else engaged with it was valid except for me. And so I think like overcoming that and realizing like, oh no, there's a healthy way to be in this sport, and I don't have to hit a certain grade or do a certain thing for my space in the sport to be secured was pretty liberating.
What do you do for work?
Right now I'm an arborist. Yeah, I do tree work.
Okay, nice. Do you so this vein of like self-worth in climbing and like the pressure we put on ourselves to perform and the attachment it has to our identity and our ego at times, at least for me, anecdotally, I had the same experience, but it was because I lacked purpose and kind of like direction in my life in other areas. And so climbing was the one thing that I felt like I could work on. And if I couldn't do climbing, then I had nothing else to fall back onto. Was there an element of that with the pressure that you put on yourself? Is there any sort of kind of parallel thinking with that?
Yeah, I think so. At the time, I was in a relationship that in hindsight, I was very unhappy in and had a lot of self-esteem issues arise from. I was doing work with people I really loved, but in something that didn't feel super challenging for me. And I was kind of felt like I was stagnating a little bit in that I had spent a lot of my life scheming how I could get out of South Carolina. I was now out of South Carolina, working in space, like making like more money than I thought I would ever make, doing these things, in this relationship that seemed very successful at the time. And I just felt very unfulfilled and felt like I wasn't moving towards things. And this felt like a whole new opportunity for growth. I think I have probably like 2 core values in my life, and one of which is growth, and the other one is like shared experiences with people, and climbing just nailed both for me. And so I really was putting basically all of my self-worth into it from there. And so I think putting it in a way where it's like, hey, I still derive self-worth from this, but my self-worth isn't defined by this, if that makes sense, right? Like I get to see the test of who I am as a person through this sport, but if I fail those tests in climbing, that doesn't mean I fail them elsewhere in life, right? If I blow my project or give up on a project, that doesn't mean I'm giving up on a relationship that's going through a tough patch, or, failing at a job or things like that, right? It's just another place in which I spend my time. And so I think like that's kind of where that healthier mindset came from.
And I think you also diversified, right? It's like, it's so easy to get super hyper focused on grades and performance, and usually that pushes us to take unnecessary risks, but it almost sounds like you found more fulfillment and more self-worth through other avenues of climbing, which was route development and stewardship. Like there's this other side of the coin that you can participate in, that kind of rounds yourself out as a climber and takes the pressure off of performance, which I think is so important.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, now I unfortunately derive a lot of my self-worth from what I can provide to others. So the route development thing is kind of enabling that spiral a little bit. But I mean, like you talked about like community, right? Finding the community. And I think that's the thing that from climbing, I've both struggled with and been the most happy with. I really struggle with identifying the climbing community in some ways. Historically, when people said, Tal is a very unique name, so I get recognized at the crag a lot, like just for like, oh, I've heard that name before. And historically, it's been like, oh, I've seen you on Mountain Project. But now it's starting to be like a little bit of like oh, I've seen your routes, I've seen the guidebook, things like that, which is pretty cool. But like I've definitely gotten into it with people online and got in real life and just like I'm a very like strong opinions, loosely held person, as you know personally. Mm-hmm. Kyle.
I do. Yeah, no, let's talk about that. So it sounds like you've kind of like had this like Tal online versus like Tal now. What kind of made you what stirred your fire? What like got you roused up online? Like what was the reason for the heat and like the energy that you had towards kind of like engaging with the community in that way? Were you trying to prove something? Do you feel like, what was your mentality behind interacting in that way?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I was actually thinking about that today. I don't know exactly. One thing I know that really grinds my gears in general is when people are very definitive about things that are a nuanced situation. And I found myself consistently having conversations with people where I just in my head, I was like, they're saying that there's a definitive right answer here and there's just not. Like there's so many different ways to skin a cat. And so it's frustrating to feel like my answer is right and their answer is right and they're not acknowledging that, like that both options can be correct. And I don't know about you, I've never stopped discussing something with someone when they told me I had no idea what I was talking about. And I did that all the time. Like I would just I'd be like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And so I think that's how I stopped engaging, is I was like, there's like, we're both right. I don't need them to admit that I'm right. Like I know I'm right. They know they're right. Sounds like we're both in a good situation here. And so I've like really dialed back a lot on that. Now, mostly when I get involved, it's people acting in bad faith. I think like when people are like not willing to hold a conversation, like I'll get fiery in person too. I'm never like mean or yelling or anything like that, but like I'm willing to like defend. I will die on any hill pretty much any given time, whether in person or online. And so I'm like willing to have those discussions there, but it's also given me a lot of my community and like built a lot of the friendships. It's just like being honest to who I am and like honest about my thoughts. And like I'm a very like, what you're gonna get with me. Like I'm not hiding behind anything. And seeing that come out in a lot of like partners and friends as well has been awesome. Like you had Tanner on the podcast, he's my brother, and the biggest thing climbing's given me is like me and my brother growing up were not super close, and we're like best friends now, and climbing's been a huge point of that, of a place where we can bond and gives us this like amphitheater to really open up in ways that I think are like, it's way easier to have a deep hard conversation on a wall than it is in a living room for some reason for us. And so it's been a huge place for like the mountain's been a huge place for growth for both of us.
Cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely a level playing field, and yeah, there's something about nature, man. It's healing. It's healing.